You're listening to Release Your Resistance with Bex Beltran, episode 82. Welcome to Release Your Resistance. This is Bex. The only reason why any of us don't have what we want in life is because of our own resistance. Right now, I'm learning how to recognize and release my resistance, and this podcast tells you how you can release your resistance so that you can live the exact life that you want. Let's get started. It's been about 6 months since I started to explore the idea of surrender, and I decided that I would completely immerse myself in the concept and find resources and teach myself and talk about surrender as much as possible. So in those past 6 months, I have read multiple books and reread them. I have listened to podcasts. I have been a member of a surrender study group that met for 8 weeks in March and April. And most recently, I led a surrender summer camp with a group of people who are also equally interested in surrender and curious about how we can practice surrender in our own lives and how we can practice and apply all of these surrender concepts. So today I wanted to share with you my own notes and my thoughts. And since I'm about 6 months into my own surrender journey, I thought it would be interesting to give you a 6-month check-in. In case you haven't listened to my episodes from earlier this year, when I talked about kind of stumbling onto the idea of surrender through Michael Singer's book called The Surrender Experiment, and then learning about how to practically apply the steps of surrender from Tosha Silver's book, It's Not Your Money, I will just give you my own personal understanding and definition, and then what I've taken from those examples and from my research thus far. As I know it right now, surrender is letting go of trying to control the outcomes, letting go of trying to control other people, and letting go of trying to control reality. When I say trying to control, that is the same thing as resistance. This is maybe why the surrender work has been so attractive to me, because my entire work and focus last year was all about learning to recognize and release resistance. And now I'm recognizing part of releasing resistance is surrender. So what does surrender look and feel like? One of my current favorite teachers, who I just mentioned, Tosha Silver, calls surrender a relief. It's relaxing, this clenching, this grasping, this holding onto that we might be doing so automatically and so much in a default way that we don't even realize that we are doing it. It might feel so familiar to grasp onto and hold onto and control that when we finally do surrender, it can feel like liberation. When we are liberated and when we feel open instead of grasping and tight, when we are open to acceptance instead of fear or instead of trying to defend ourselves against everything, then we have more awareness and openness to possibilities and to seeing our options, which we may have been blinded to before. When some people hear the phrase surrender, they get an immediate response of no. They don't want to surrender. They think surrender is like giving up or giving in. Maybe they think surrender is being submissive. Well, it is submitting to reality. It is giving up the idea that control is even possible. It is giving up the illusion of control, and it's also giving up our own personal need to control. When we are living in resistance, we are spending so much of our own energy and our own effort, and we can't even see the possibilities that might be available to us. We make it harder and more stressful on ourselves. And we are so accustomed to it that we are not even aware of that additional effort, that additional stress, that additional difficulty. Learning to surrender and making surrender an intentional practice helps to relieve that pressure and difficulty. Practicing surrender opens my mind and it opens me to more possibility. It reminds me of a lovely and important belief that I am and always have been fine, and I believe that I will continue to be fine. In Tosha Silver's book, It's Not Your Money, she shares 5 practical steps to surrender. And these are specific things you can do to get this openness and awareness and abundance. And I reworked and renamed those steps for myself so that they would make more sense to me. So instead of 5 steps, I actually have 3 suggestions, but they are kind of a combination and a remix of the steps that Tosha offered. One of Tosha's steps encourages cleaning and getting rid of physical possessions. I expanded on that idea because in addition to physically cleaning, I also like the idea of intentionally brainwashing myself. I intentionally brainwashed myself by reading Tosha's Full Abundance Change Me prayer every single day. And maybe I even memorized it, but I still read it from the paper. And as I got more and more familiar with it, as I went, I changed some verbiage. I took away some of the words that didn't really appeal to me. I added phrases, especially once we were in that study group that I mentioned back in March and April, and we all talked about this work together. As we noticed other things that were aligned with the verses and the statements and the sentences, I think everyone in the group personalized the Full Abundance Change Me prayer as they read it out loud or to themselves. So this intentional and daily brainwashing is very helpful. What if you said a phrase or a verse or a poem or a prayer or a song lyric to yourself every single day that you had personally, especially curated for yourself, that reminds you of the messages that you want to hear? What if you had a daily active reminder of the beliefs that you want to carry with you every day? What if you read that to yourself and believed it and internalized it every single day? That's what I did, and it really made a huge difference in my outlook, in noticing my thoughts. It really, really made a difference for me, and it cannot hurt. Even if you're skeptical, why not just give it a try for 30 days, or even just 10 days, or even just 1 day? Just see if it makes a difference. In addition to the brainwashing, if you also decided to do the actual cleaning and clearing, like getting rid of physical, tangible things from around your space, it makes room for other things. It shows you that there is so much space and there is so much openness. It can be a metaphor, but it's also just a great practice. Plus, it sends you down an experiment of getting rid of things and then having the opportunity to notice your own maybe inherited or maybe practiced beliefs and thoughts that pop up as you try to let things go. You may even start to wonder why it might be difficult to let some things go. So that can get very metaphorical even when you're doing the physical work. The second step that I combine Tosha's 5 steps into is saying no and yes. Say no to complaining. Say no to scarcity thoughts. Say no to feeling sorry for yourself. Say yes to opportunities. Say yes to possibilities. Say yes to being open. Say yes to receiving compliments. Say yes to accepting help. Say yes to being generous. I like that the meaning of this reminder, this suggestion of saying no and yes, is very succinct. Even if it isn't clear or obvious on its own without the explanation, it is kind of easy to remember if you know the backstory. We say no to things that don't help, like scarce thinking and complaining and worrying. We say yes to things that do help, like being open, being generous, being accepting, and receiving. And the third suggestion that I have been following in my own surrender practice is give and receive. I love this one because it perfectly illustrates Tosha's idea or metaphor of being a conduit. Imagine yourself as a pipeline instead of as a container. If you are a pipeline, things come in and things go out. Things flow through you. If you are allowing things to flow through you, you are allowing yourself to receive things. You're also allowing yourself to give things. When you're in the space and the practice of giving and receiving, you can see how much you do have to be grateful for. So that means you can give freely. Because of that last suggestion of saying no and yes, we are not being scarce anymore. We are not worrying anymore. You can give freely. You can let things flow through. Some of the other reading that I did as a result of the surrender work was reading Judith Orloff's book, The Power of Surrender. And by the way, I did notice that book has 2 different titles, so it might be based on if you've got the audio or the physical print copy. I think if you just look up Judith Orloff, you can find it. Orloff. I really appreciated what she said about surrendering in relationships. And as I was thinking about relationships, it took me back to my coach certification training and noticing that if we have expectations for other people, that might be a source of stress and resistance. If we think other people should be different than how they are, of course we are going to be disappointed because people are how they are. If we expect them to be different, then we are expecting the wrong thing. So when we have a healthy relationship with others, we allow them to be exactly who and how they are. We decide in advance to just love them unconditionally, no matter how they behave. And I have noticed people have a hard time with that one. People think, well, yeah, I love unconditionally, but wait, what about if they do this? Or if they behave that way? Well, that's a condition. You are saying, if this condition is met, I will no longer love. What if you asked, how could I love someone unconditionally, no matter how they behave, no matter what they do? Unconditional love doesn't only have to be about other people. It's also about loving ourselves as well. In my surrender work, I am learning to have a healthy relationship with myself. And to me, that means I practice believing and knowing that I am 100% worthy and whole. On the surface, we might say, well, yeah, of course, I know that I'm worthy. Of course, I am a whole person. But then, do we really act like that? Do we really tell ourselves that throughout the day? Or do we tell ourselves, I'm not good enough. I should have done that better. If only I could be like this instead of the way that I am. Some of us are giving ourselves these messages consistently that we are not worthy and that we are somehow less than whole. It might not be actively, specifically telling ourselves we're unworthy or less than, but an example of how I see this in myself sometimes is when I'm journaling and I get a prompt about something that I deserve credit for or what good feedback could I give myself in this moment. And instead of easily, at the snap of my fingers, coming up with an answer, I will spend a few moments or minutes or maybe longer negotiating with myself. Something will pop into my mind, something that I deserve credit for, and I'll immediately discount it, implying to myself that what I did was not good enough or should have been better. It's very subtle, but as I have been doing this work, I have been noticing these subtle, sneaky examples. And it makes me question if I really do know that I am worthy and whole. This might also apply if you have been a people pleaser, either right now, currently, or in the past. It's important to notice that you do not need to please anyone else. In fact, it's impossible. You cannot please someone else. If someone else is pleased, it's because of their own thoughts, not because of the occurrence of your behavior. But we easily believe that we need to please other people in order to be worthy of their love or even just worthy of their attention. The truth is, we are already 100% worthy of love and attention and respect, and we do not need to control what other people think about us or how they feel about us. In fact, not only do we not need to control that, we couldn't even if we wanted to. As we are learning to surrender and noticing that we want to be an open conduit for love, abundance, and generosity to flow through us to experience a life of surrender, we might notice that we do have some blocks against doing this. Some of our blocks might be really important sounding obstacles and long-held reasons about why we wouldn't be able to move towards what we want. And these blocks can come alongside of emotions like doubt and fear and confusion and unworthiness. So as we notice that we have a block in an area, maybe it's time to examine that block and really consider, is that a real reason? Is that thing that I believe even true? Where did it come from? Where did I pick that up? When did I start believing that? We might also want to consider why that block has stuck around and not just dissipated or evaporated on its own the way other beliefs and other ideas have throughout our lives. Why have we continued to believe it and continue to let it block us? As we notice the blocks, we can then decide to intentionally release or clear those blocks. You can do this metaphorically, like with some kind of a little ceremony, maybe write it on a piece of paper and burn it, or you can release blocks intellectually as well. I think a really effective way to clear blocks is to notice them first and then to work through them. And you can do this obviously by journaling, really honest, authentic journaling. If you really get honest with yourself and write down what is blocking you, and then instead of blaming or shaming yourself for feeling blocked by it, you really get curious about it and allow yourself to consider why and how it blocks you and what it would be like if it wasn't blocking you, and just consider it from every different angle, that can help release some of the block. And as we are going through this most recent 8 weeks in Surrender Camp, some of the comments that I got from some people were along the lines of, wow, this is a lot of work. You have given us so much to think about. Yeah, no kidding. Doing surrender work can bring up some uncomfortable and unfamiliar concepts and ideas. And part of the surrender work is finding comfort in discomfort. Because the thing that our brain wants to do the least is run towards an uncomfortable situation. That's part of our evolutionary makeup. Our primitive brain's job is to avoid pain and seek pleasure. So when we consider, maybe I'm going to spend 8 weeks or 6 months, or even considering how I can give up control or how I never even had control in the first place and how I'm going to allow things to unfold as they will without my interference, we might think I could never do that. It sounds completely uncomfortable to not know the outcome and not be able to control the outcome and have to give up the things that I have believed for so long and examine some ugly and not so great parts of my own personal belief system. Yeah, that's pretty uncomfortable. We can accept that discomfort is a part of growth and transformation and remind ourselves that we are willing to find comfort in our own discomfort. We are willing to notice our own fear and our own resistance and our own hesitation about making these changes. And then when we do encounter this discomfort, which we know for sure is going to come, we can recognize that this was expected and we can even welcome it. We can even use it as proof or as a marker of growth and transformation. Maybe why it's uncomfortable is because part of this work can be accepting our own responsibility instead of blaming others or blaming external situations. Have you ever found yourself blaming a neutral circumstance for what's happening or how you're feeling? Could you notice if accepting responsibility and allowing yourself to take responsibility for what you control in this, which is just your reaction, could you just notice your thoughts? Does that help you loosen or reduce any tightness or any constriction that you might feel? How would it feel to be open about what is actually happening in life instead of just feeling shut down by it? How can you accept responsibility for your own reaction and your own thoughts and feelings instead of giving that responsibility in the form of blame to someone or something outside of yourself. And the last concept I want to bring up from the Surrender Study Group, the books and the resources that I have been studying to learn more about surrender, and from Surrender Camp that just ended, is the concept of trust. You always have the option to trust or distrust. Think of how you feel when you trust. And then think of how you feel when you don't trust. Sometimes we don't allow ourselves to trust because we think we are protecting ourselves. We could ask ourselves, are we actually protecting ourselves from a true threat? Or is this from a possible made-up future threat that our primitive brain is suggesting to us? So the question would be, is this self-protection in the form of lack of trust? Is this helpful or harmful? As I re-listened to the Learning to Surrender episode I recorded for you back in February, I recognized how far I have come in this learning so far this year. But at the same time, as I discussed how to let go and accept and allow with my fellow surrender campers over the past 8 weeks, I recognized how much of this I am still learning and how much new understanding I am gaining as I continue. 6 months ago, I was worried about being bored and living a monk-like existence. That definitely has not happened, at least not in the past 6 months. I have noticed that as difficult and unfortunate things pop up for me, I do not feel as threatened by them as I might have in the past. I can accept them. I can notice them. I'm not blaming. I also have noticed that I am so much more relaxed about planning things for the future. I think planning has been a proactive form of control for me in the past, and now I feel a little more loose and open about not needing to have an exact specific plan. I am noticing myself trust that things will probably work out and I will probably be fine. I can see myself choosing not to spend time or energy worrying about things that I might have invested more time and energy in past days. Have you noticed a difference in listening to this podcast each week? Do you see the effects of surrender from your vantage point? Have you started incorporating surrender into your own life? If so, how? How have you done it? And if not, why not? Do you have any resistance to surrender? I want to hear all about your surrender journey now that I've shared mine. Leave me a comment in the show notes for this episode at bexby.org/check-in, CHECKIN, no spaces, all squished together. It looks like chicken now that I'm looking at it. No, bexby.org/check-in. Or send me an email at hi@bexby.org. And just a reminder, this is the last week of this month. So before I go today, I wanted to remind you that the Notebook newsletter is coming out in the first week of next month. Every month, I send out one email with some helpful information about journaling, note-taking, or list-making, plus a quick video of some of the new arrivals in the journal shop. And there are so many. I have over 100 notebooks, journals, and workbooks in there now. So make sure you are subscribed to the Notebook newsletter to find out about all the journals and notebooks that I create for you and for myself. And when you subscribe, you will get an immediate welcome email that has 52 journal prompts for you. Plus, there will be a video of me showing you last month's journals. And then next week, you will get the current edition. You do not want to miss this. Just go to bexby.org/shop journals, SHOPJOURNALS, and scroll all the way down past all of the journals and notebooks to the bottom of the page so that you can see the email sign up. Thank you for listening today. I hope you enjoyed hearing my 6-month surrender check-in. I will talk with you next week. This has been Release Your Resistance. Thank you for listening. If you like this podcast, make sure you're subscribed and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Also, think about someone who you know who would love this episode and share it with them. There should be a share button on your app if you're listening to this on your phone. If you'd like to continue this conversation one-on-one or in real time, come visit me on my site at beckspeed.org to see how we can work together.